the watermelon harvest, male and female crew near Salisbury in Maryland. An injury. Mandated sanitary facilities, eye wash, earplugs, emergency phone numbers, and outreach by a nurse practitioner at the harvest site. These are crab pickers, all from one town in Mexico. Oops, back up a little bit. So my wife took a photograph of me photographing this crew on Randall's Island on the Eastern Shore. And one of the nice aspects about digital photography is I can show my subjects what I'm doing as I'm doing it, and furthermore, I can email my subjects photographs. In my neighborhood, this is a Cambodian nail salon worker working at Fantasy Nails. It's around the corner from my house. This is a Whole Foods baker. Recycling crew on my street. Edgar Flores and Frank Milano, both Central Americans who are my sanitation haulers. They recently won their first union contract with the laborers and have the benefit of health insurance for the first time. My dentist from Iran with his wife as his assistant. This is part of a project I'm calling New Americans at Work. This is in a lab in Maimonides Medical Center in the middle of the night. So there's crew. Oops, back up a little bit, we're almost done. This is Alfredo Quinones Hinojosa. He came to this country illegally, nearly died in an accident, returned home and crossed the border eventually legally. He gave the valedictorian address at Harvard Medical School. He's now a brain surgeon at Johns Hopkins Hospital, where he's photographed here. This is Linda Reinstein holding a picture of her husband, Alan, at a Senate hearing. Alan died of mesothelioma in 2005. Linda, his widow, is an activist in the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization. And I work with that group and have created an exhibit using employee ID badges that show the employee and the company that harmed them in the badge. These are badges from the World War II era, but this work brings to light the continual scourge of asbestos, where 15,000 individuals die from either workplace or what is called idiopathic exposures, unexplained exposures to asbestos, die annually in this country, and the number is not going down. This is my current retrospective exhibit. And that closes the long I am happy to answer questions. Okay, all right. Anyone with a question? Yes.
With OSHA, OSHA is a federal law. Do all the states respect the law and follow the law?
Some states
Earl,
defer to Fed.
could you incorporate the question into
Yes,
your
yes.
response, please?
The question was, do all states follow OSHA law? Some states defer to federal OSHA. Other states have their own inspection program. In New York State, maybe you could speak to that, Dorothy.
So what happens is that OSHA covers federal private sector workers. And so there are a number of states where public sector workers have no coverage whatsoever. I think there's like 26 states or something. In New York State, there's the Public Employees Safety and Health part of affiliated with the Department of Labor, and they cover the public sector workers in New York State. But for example, the folks from the Workers Center here will tell you that the farm workers are not covered by OSHA because of the rider that goes back to the 1970s as a result of pressure from the Farm Bureau and various other organizations that are, you know, big agriculture. And so their rule, the rule is that if there are 11, less than 11, so 10 or less people working on a farm who are not part of the family, OSHA can't go on. They can't inspect, they can't do anything if somebody dies. They're just, it's tough luck. So it's a huge issue in this state where there are a lot of dairy farms in particular. But also out in the Finger Lakes area, there have been a number of dairy workers who've died on the job. Mostly, Rebecca, mostly dairy? Yeah, anyway. So it varies.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
You were saying that you worked with the asbestos movement as well. What does it look like with your work? I mean, I imagine the photography takes a lot of your time. How are you able to contribute to the actual causes and the work that goes to prevention? You know, is there other work besides just your photography that
Well, the
has a tie-in?
pictures that I've done of the asbestos issue have ended up in this exhibit that is partially historical and partially current coverage of workers who are affected by asbestos today. And so that's an educational tool that the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization uses to acquaint the general public and politicians and victims themselves about other individuals who are facing similar issues from asbestos.
So you went into the mines with them, you spent the day in the mines kind of thing? Is that what you're happening?
Yes, I as a photographer for the Mine Journal, we travel into the mines as a recording some of the best health and safety work that miners were involved with. And so, for example, a way that I would first begin this process with perhaps maybe having dinner with the miner and his family the night before, and so Blaine Lester would say, well, in our mine tour, we're going to take you by a very wet area of the mine, and there's a guy there working with electric pumps. Make sure you take his picture as we go by. He didn't want to tap me on his shoulder with mine management watching him, you know, to direct me. So I was informed in advance of the issues on the mine tour that needed to be documented. Yes, sir.
So going into the mines, going into places like Ground Zero, going into the cotton mills where there are airborne contaminants that the workers are dealing with, do you have to wear your own personal protective equipment to protect yourself?
When I go into a workplace,
Earl, the people on the live stream can't necessarily hear the questions, they can only hear your response. So if you incorporate the question into your response, they'll be able to
the
understand.
question is, when I go into a workplace, am I adequately protected from the hazards of coal dust, the dangers of asbestos, and exposures? Fortunately, in those circumstances, I have the benefit of the Health and Safety Committee Sometimes it's union and management looking after my back. It varies though. When I went on a fishing boat, the captain's safety message was, "Earl, don't ever turn your back on the water." I don't think that was quite adequate. And so, but most of the time, I felt I was well protected. I was wearing the appropriate equipment to protect me from asbestos fibers or coal dust, iron protection, ear protection, hard hats, and so on. Okay, yes, in the back.
I was just wondering, what was your hardest subject to photograph and work with, and why?
My hardest, the question is, what was my hardest subject to work with and why? And I'm thinking, as I rephrase that question, I think over the years that the greatest challenges occur when I am new to a community and the credibility that folks who have been acquainted with this community they enjoy a level of trust. I need that level of trust transferred to me before I can do my job. And for instance, today, I was a newcomer to the Worker Center rally. And understandably, people who had never seen me before were a little bit shy in front of the camera. And I respected that. Ideally, I would have been introduced beforehand to Rebecca, and she might have introduced me to the gathering, if that was at all appropriate. And so that would kind of overcome that reticence, which is only natural. Yes?
What kind of pushback have you ever experienced from management level or from the other echelons in the corporations?
Whatever pushback have I experienced from management when I have attempted to work in a workplace? Outright denial of access even before I went to the plant. Access denied when I'm at the factory gate. In the digital age, requests to review all the pictures after I've taken them. So those are a few of the issues. It's very interesting though. Even if my selection of pictures is reviewed, the reviewer is not that in touch with the hazards that are right before him. He's gotten used to seeing the trip hazards and the dusty workplace. It's nothing new to him. And so he may excise certain pictures that I would love to have, but there's a whole batch of other photographs that he completely forgets about. Yes, great.
Yeah, my imagination might be running away with me, but I wonder where would it be today politically had you been invited to present your work to the Democratic National Committee, say 2-3 years ago?
The question is, I wonder if these kinds of photographs could have had an impact in our recent presidential election, if I can rephrase your question. I don't know. I am reminded of the Life magazine photographer W. Eugene Smith, who had a goal to end all war as a photographer during World War II. And he strived to take the kind of picture that would be so emotionally wrenching that we would forget about war. I don't think he succeeded. So I'm not too much of an optimist about the response. I think social progress is always incremental. And we can do our best all the time to improve the circumstances of workers and the environment, and sees opportunities as they come along. But I'm a realist. I hope the pictures have a message for today, but one of the things that photography does is the photographs do live on. And it's kind of interesting that Louis Hine died in poverty, but his pictures are considered high art today, of child labor, of immigrants coming to this country. You know, he did remarkable work, but in his lifetime, it was a struggle every day for him. Yes?
You mentioned a moment ago that there was a time where you went into a workspace and you were told ahead of time when something was coming up because the person leading you did not want management or supervisors to see him tap you on the shoulder. Under what basis were you allowed into this space?
The question is, when I was entering a mine with advanced knowledge about a particular hazard that a miner wanted me to photograph, what was the reason I was allowed in the mine in the first place? And that was because I was a representative of the Mine Workers Union. And in advance, the power of the union local, they had a contractual right to refuse unsafe work. They could leave the mine if that pump was about to electrocute that miner. And so they had a power that was contractually originated. And so asking their photographer to come was kind of maybe a step toward that more drastic action.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I might have missed earlier, but have any of the photographs you've taken actually resulted in changes in legislation or OSHA rules or?
Well, I know that the images have been exhibits before Senate and House committees, that OSHA commissioned me to take photographs that ended up in literature that the workers could hold in their hands, and in this day and time can be seen online by workers. And so there is a social benefit. And I can rephrase your question a little bit late. Sam was asking about whether there are specific instances where I could point to a social benefit. And the pictures that I have taken, in some cases, have been used in lawsuits against equipment manufacturers, industrial mining equipment manufacturers, the photographs that I have taken. That hasn't been real often, but it has occurred. Anyone else? Yes.
What's next?
What is next? I'm a 74-year-old man almost, and I am starting to photograph in my own community. The power line crew that's doing their job safely. As an example, the worker at Fantasy Nails around the corner, my trash haulers, the farm worker community that is at work on the Eastern Shore. I'm volunteering to do that work a lot more because I'm a little bit established now than I used to be. So it's a little more close to home, and I'm also focusing on exhibits that represent what I've accomplished over the years. Yes?
So you said you worked for the union for the miners. You worked for a newspaper, you said? So your employment has been variable and you've had like grants and things? Is that how it's
The question is, how has my work been supported? Yes, I did work for the Mine Workers Union for a period of 5 years. I did not become a full-time employee because of those of you who are photographers. As a full-time employee, I would not own my negatives, but as a contract worker with the mine workers, I didn't get health insurance, but I owned my negatives and I kept control of them. And that's an integral part of the artistic process, so that was very important to me. I have only worked for newspapers on assignment basis and magazines. I'm affiliated with the Harvard School of Public Health. They have helped me raise money for projects like the Commercial Fishing Project. They wrote a good letter to the Alicia Patterson Foundation, and I received a year's worth of support to do the commercial fishing photography as a result. And I'm also the benefit of the fact that my wife has been an attorney for the Mine Workers Union for 30 years with a regular income and now a pension. Credit where credit is due.
So, thank you very much. There are some munchies back there. I think we're good for another 15, 20 minutes. I know the weather is awful. I just got a text from Rick in the Southern Tier that the power was out down there. They had a tornado and everybody went home. So I'm not quite sure what you'll be facing when you leave here. I hope that it's not too difficult. I know some folks came a fair distance. But you've got another 15, 20 minutes. Check out the photographs. Chat up Earl. Talk to folks from the clinic if that is useful. Chat up with your neighbors up. Please support ArtRage. There's a little brochure, Rose, just because you're passed by. There's a little brochure there about the exhibit, and there's a donation bucket up here.
Okay, thank